Welcome to Season 2 of Digging Deeper Ag Chats with Al, the podcast that brings you timely and practical stories straight from the paddock. From sowing to shearing, fire to flood, and everything in between. We're here when it matters most. Each episode taps into real experiences, expert voices, and grounded advice that helps you stay ahead on farm. I'm Alister from the Gippsland Ag Group, a grassroots farmer-led network in Gippsland, focusing on soil, grain and fodder, pasture and livestock. We're here to support producers in building resilient and profitable enterprises across our region. So let's dig in. Welcome to Digging Deeper. We've got two guests sitting opposite me today. We've got Brad Smith and Brett Tompkins. How you going, boys?
Yep. Hi, mate.
Yeah, all good.
Now, Brett, I didn't actually ask you this before the podcast. You want to share about your adventure in the next little while? Bit of free PR for you.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I've been an agronomist the last 8 or 9 years and worked across fertilizer and seed, both at retail and wholesale level. So,
Who for? Who are you with?
Currently with RAGT, so based in Shepparton there, but I looked after eastern Victoria and a bit of southern coastal New South Wales and the Monero. So saw a lot of different country with that, which was really good. But missed a lot of time on farm, which is where my passion really is. So, just saw that there was a real need for more agronomists on the ground in Gippsland and thought I'd have a crack at that. So started my own pasture consulting business.
What name are you settled on?
Grassroots Ag Services.
There you go. Come up with that all by yourself?
I did, mate. Yeah. Didn't need AI for that one, so I was happy with that.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
And when do you actually start?
It's in the new year, so either the 5th or the 12th of Jan.
Yep,
Yeah.
so might have actually started before this goes out on air. So
Yeah, that'll be nice. Yeah.
So if you're looking for some on-farm agro service, give Brett a call. Most people would probably know you around the district, actually. So
Yeah, been at the a couple of the spring field days and some of the extension events at Gippy Ag Group and around the traps. So, happy to help.
Yep. No, you've been really useful and always willing to put up your hand, so appreciate that. And
Thanks,
so
mate.
Hopefully that's not going to change. We'll get it on-air commitment, will we?
Yeah, I'll still help out. I'll put my hat in the ring with that. So
Yeah,
no
very
stress.
good to see. All right, we'll swing over to you for a minute, Brad. Firstly, tell us a bit about Smith Graziers and what your operation looks at before we get into what we're here for today.
Yeah, we've got a family-owned business and started out in the high country up in at Tambo Crossing. Partnership with me and my wife Jen and mum and dad, and cattle and sheep up there. And then in the last few years we bought a property at Clifton Creek and shifted some cattle down there, lived there for a while, and then 2 years ago bought another property out here at Bing Warden. So we're living out there currently and got the sheep down there and composite ewes out there and fat lamb job and cattle up in the high country in Clifton Creek.
Yeah, what's some numbers you got running around at the minute, Brad?
There's about 500 calves on the ground at the moment of our own, about 2,500 lambs on the ground. So, plus a couple of share farms in the middle. So there's another 100 odd cows there as well, 110 cows that we share farm around the place. So, keeps us busy.
You always run around like a headless chook when I see you, so it's more than busy. Now, the reason that we're here today is we've got a PDS sponsored by MLA on the research farm here called Perennial Pastures. Brad's been involved since the very start of it, and you're actually one of the producer demonstration sites, weren't you, Brad?
Yep, we started that in just after the bushfires in 2000, I think. So, yeah.
Yep. Do you want to explain to the listeners actually what we did here at the research farm, and then we'll move into what you've done on your place? But what was the idea here at the research farm? What did the actual trial look like?
Yeah, so it started out, there's a couple of paddocks there, and one of them was sort of just a spray and drill it in. There's multiple different species plots across that. And then we had one that was sprayed twice, so like a chemical fallow. So sprayed once and left a couple of months and sprayed again, and same thing, replicated species across there. And then the following year there was a next site. It had an annual crop leading up to it, so a bit of a clean-up phase, and then similar, same. The rest of it was all done the same, and then the fourth spot was 2 annual crops leading into the perennial sowing.
Yep. So the idea behind the trial was to actually see what establishment method was going to work best for establishing long-term perennial pastures, and then what species grew well in the plot. So when did you come on board? Because after a year or so, we got producers around the area to actually do what they wanted to do on their farm. So what did you actually choose to do in the end, Brad?
Yeah, so we sowed down a fair bit of perennial country at the same time. I think we had about 60 or 70 hectares that year that we'd sowed down. So we actually had a couple of clean-up crops leading up to it, a couple of annual crops. We double cropped it. So plenty of sprays, plenty of clean-up time. We had a cultivation in there to level it out.
And this was up at Tambo, wasn't it?
Up at Tambo Crossing, yeah, that's correct. And then we sprayed it out over the summer, chemical fallow. So we actually had 3 sprays over the summer, one sort of just before Christmas, one in January with a bit of rain, and then one sort of the day before we sowed it, and we direct drilled straight into it. Yeah.
All right, Brad, to swing over to you then. From a agronomy point of view, how would you describe the last couple of years here in East Gippsland when we've been planting these perennial pastures?
Yeah, so we know East Gippsland's quite variable, but like when I started at retail level at Brown's Fertilizer in Maffra, the first 3 years there would have been 2017, 18, 19. They were effectively drought years.
You weren't planting much perennials then, I guess.
No, and for me, like I grew up in northern Victoria and Echuca, and seeing East Gippsland through those times, it was very reminiscent of some of that land in northern Vic, and then the drought broke sort of around that 2019 time, and especially over the last couple of years, there's been some really good autumn breaks. The last 12 months in particular, when West and South Gippsland, it's been really hard autumn and winter, and spring's become an unbelievably good spring, but there has been some moisture there the last couple of autumns in East Gippsland to actually get perennial pastures up and running and follow up rain as well, so they're not just getting out of the ground and burning off. So establishment in the last couple of years has been pretty good, but obviously before that it was very difficult to get enough moisture early in the season to have that good balance between temperature and moisture to get a perennial pasture up and running. So we know we're only, it could be this season, could be in a couple of years when something like that happens again. So it's just knowing that variability's there is important.
So that's in the establishment phase, but once we've got a perennial established, that variability in rainfall and the differences, does it outperform on a general rule? So why would we be planting perennials? I'm getting it. Yeah,
definitely. I think that's the biggest thing with perennials. They're going to reduce your risk from that variability of moisture. Your deep-rooted perennials, especially Coxwood, are very adaptive to rain events through summer. Flaris, fescue as well. Just able to capture that moisture that might be perceived as out of season and actually convert it into feed. So pretty important there. And and even once you get your autumn break, you're not waiting 6-8 weeks like you will with an annual to actually get on it. You can have feed in a couple of weeks, or with Coxwood it might even be in a week after a good rain in sort of that February, April time of year. So I think the biggest thing with perennials, it's just going to lengthen your growing season, and if there is out of season rainfall, it's going to convert that into feed that you can get some weight on your stock, or maybe keep ewes or cows milking that bit longer.
Righto, Brad, you said your preparation was a fairly long process. What did you actually do right from the start when you picked the paddock you wanted to cultivate or renovate to now? What did that look like?
Well, we've had a few different processes over the years, and different properties and different timelines and that. So, obviously the more preparation, the better the results. But like at Clifton Creek, we've sown some down in one go, just sprayed it out. And
why? We'll go back a little bit. Why could you spray that down and sow that straight away? I'm assuming the paddock was in much better shape than.
Yeah, it's reasonably good shape. Level, so we didn't have to cultivate it. And timing, like we had bushfires come through, so sort of cleaned everything up. Then we needed a heap of feed quickly. I didn't have machinery on the place for long, so I didn't want to be tying up machinery and that there, having to take them between properties. So we just went down there, drilled it all out. With low-rated grass seed, and we didn't worry about clovers. They sort of fill back in later on. So I suppose just depends, horses for courses, depends where you're at and what stage. The property we're at the moment, our Bing Warden here, had a lot of thistles and needed a lot of work and was very rough. So a few more passes and a few more crops in there to clean it all up in that system. But I think one of the big things for us, like especially in the hills, just leveling paddocks out. We've got sticks and stumps and trees and rocks and wombat holes and everything else. So, cultivation stage. Sometimes we put a burn in there as well just to clean up the trash and get on top of the, down here at Warden, we had a lot of bent grass and love grass and all that sort of stuff. So it's pretty hard to bury that without burning it in the first place. So we burnt it, let it sprout back nice and fresh, sprayed it, cultivated it, and then level it out, drill usually a crop of ryegrass and some oats or something in there so we can put a broadleaf spray over it. And then, often a summer crop straight after that, and then straight in. So
now, Brett, let's just talk about weed burden.
Yep.
When you're going in looking at a client's paddock, what are you looking for? And Brad said that sometimes he sort of double annual cropped with multiple sprays. When do you start making decisions about what sort of process we have to do? Yeah,
so paddock walk's obviously a pretty important part of that. Perennial grass weeds are probably the biggest issue. There can be a bit of broadleaf present, like even if it's a high load of cape weed or something along those lines, there's good chemical options to get that out of establishing pastures. But something like bent grass, cooch, love grass, there's some perennial grass weeds and some annual grass weeds as well. It can be a real problem. But the other thing is,
if there's those sorts of summer grasses are present, we're looking at multiple years before we even try it.
Probably minimum 18 months. If you're starting in spring, you might be able to go with a summer crop, an annual, another summer crop. That might be enough to clean it up. But it's then just keeping an eye on what weeds are coming back and if you're getting on top of them before you sow down, because obviously sow into a perennial, you're wanting that longevity out of the pasture. So that's certainly one aspect of it. The other one as well is if a paddock does need some lime or gypsum or other amendments, and it hasn't been cultivated for a long time, it's highly likely you're going to bring up a lot of weed seeds. So even if the paddock does look relatively clean, if it does need to be dissed up for compaction issues or whatever it is, I think it's best practice to crop it for about 12 months just to clear some of that seed bank of weeds that's there and give your perennials a good chance to establish and actually produce.
Yep, so it sort of leads into the next question. When would you say to a client or producer, not yet, you're not ready yet? What's some red flags in a paddock?
So weed burden's certainly the biggest one, but as far as the soil test, pH and available phosphorus, or an Olsen P, it is on most Victorian soil tests, it would be the big ones. So pH is going to dictate how, I guess, the return we get out of our fertilizer, how available those nutrients are going to be.
Have you got some numbers off the top of your head there, Brett?
Oh, absolute minimum pH of 5 I'd be going into. Ideally, if we're soil testing sort of minimum 12 months ahead, we can apply lime. Let it do its thing for up to a year, and if we're sort of in low 5s and we've applied lime in the last 12 months, it's usually going to be fine.
What about the Olsen P?
Absolute minimum, probably a 12. There's a lot of soil tests, especially in East Gippsland, where we might be at 7s or 8s, but a capital phosphorus program over, say, a 3-year period is usually enough to get it to around that 12 or even up to 15. But also keeping in mind that if we're looking at an Olsen P test, we've got to be careful to also consider aluminium and iron levels. They'll greatly reduce, the real-world phosphorus availability, not just what we're seeing on paper. And that's where the pH is pretty important. So for addressing pH and keeping an eye on available phosphorus, they're usually the two main parameters, and then some of the other elements are a little bit easier to maintain and to build up once we've got those bigger picture nutrients covered.
Nice one. Now, Brad, before the project, how do you approach the soil test and fertilizer, and has anything changed, especially with what Brett's been just saying then?
Yeah, I've been a bit slack, I suppose, on the soil test and fertiliser. I've done plenty of soil tests in the past, but not particularly organised, and get a bit of advice from blokes like Brett and a few agronomists over the years. But generally, we sort of put a bit of lime over, 2 to 3 tonnes of lime, plenty of fert in with the annual crops leading up, some 100 kilos of MAP or DAP in the annual crops. And once you do that 2 or 3 times, it seems to pick up the pH levels pretty quick. The Olsen's pretty quick. So I think I've been running a few courses trying to learn a bit more, but I've got a limited capacity there in my brain. So
Yeah, or when you got someone sitting beside you can sprout numbers off, it's sometimes easier to talk to them and
let him make those decisions. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, something that you will be making decisions on is most operations are short on cash. So where do you start to spend your money on the soil preparation? What were sort of some things if someone is thinking, I can't afford to spend all that cash right now, what's some real bang for buck things you can do?
Yeah, well, look, we've found just those P levels and pH levels are, if we can get them sort of close to right species is what we've found the main thing. Like, you can have all the soil tests looking right, and if you're growing bent grass and couch and love grass, then it's sort of not much point. But some paddocks we haven't put any fert on and just sprayed them out and sown into them. We've got significant results on what we had. So I haven't stressed too much on that level, but just getting the rubbish cleaned out and the good species in. That's helped us a lot.
And I think the weed burden's probably always going to be the number one thing to consider, because if we are putting fertiliser on, say it's single super or 3-in-1 or whatever it is, if there's only half of that paddock that's desirable species, then we're effectively doubling what the real cost of that fertiliser is. So cleaning that paddock up and getting more productive species that our stock are actually going to convert into live weight gain or milk or whatever we're trying to do. That's always going to be the best return. So getting that weed burden down, I think, is the number one priority.
And plenty of nitrogen too. Like, once you got a bit of canopy cover, chuck 100 kilos urea out and then hit it again in the springtime. It seems to get the roots going and thicken it up. And once you get a bit of good canopy cover, you sort of holds a lot of your weeds back anyway. So
Now, just for listeners, there is a whole lot of information on costing going into this trial, wasn't there, and how much dry matter produced. So if you want to look up some more numbers, and economically, Brad's still doing it, so it must stack up, because Jen wouldn't sign the checks if it wasn't. But you did mention species there, desirable species. What are some of the main perennial species in Gippsland right now, Brett?
If we think of West and South Gippsland, perennial ryegrass are still king there. They have issues with persistence, more from a pugging damage point of view, high stocking rates that you'd expect with dairy, and high rainfall beef, where you'd be anywhere from 800 to sort of 1,200-1,300 mil rainfall. And then as the rainfall starts to drop off, and especially far east Gippsland, where we're more summer dominant than winter dominant rainfall in parts, you start to see that trend to summer active cocksfoots. Phalaris, which produce a bulk of feed in winter, another deep-rooted perennial, and your ryegrass is more your short-term variety. So fescue's another one that can suit, especially under irrigation, but got to be really careful to be able to keep that down to keep the quality. So cocksfoot and Phalaris would be the two major perennial grasses, and certainly complemented with subclover, some white clover, strawberry clover, and a little bit of chicory and plantain, depending on, again, weed burden's probably the main thing to consider.
Yeah. What about you, Braz? Anything else that you like to see in there? I know there's a bit of lucerne sometimes thrown in there.
Yeah, we sort of a few different things. The prairie grass seems to go right too in the mix. We have got some lucerne, a lot of clovers, some chicory and some plantain in some. We sort of hamstring ourselves a bit there with weed control, but it makes up for it with the amount of feed that we grow, especially once it warms up too, and the quality too. Those sheep. Really.
You're saying that the chicory limits your chemical? Is that?
Yeah. I've got
plantain especially.
I've got a couple of paddocks there at the moment. It's about 40 hectares that Brett's trying to help us get on top of the thistles in there, but it just keeps coming back. Every shower we get, 2 weeks, and there's feed back in there every single time, and that chicory and plantain and the lucerne, this time of year when it starts warming up, that they really take over. So it's a bit of a
and the grasses in that particular system are almost there just to balance the diet out for the animal by providing enough fibre. So you're getting all that great quality from your herbs and your clovers, and the grass is really there to have that effective fibre in the room and to slow room and passage rate a bit and actually convert it into body weight. So if you look in Brad and Jen's pastures that Brad's mentioned on that 40 hectares, it's plants per square metre is where they're really driving profit. So ensuring your sowing rates are high enough, not just the species selection, is a really important one as well. You might think you're saving a bit of money, but it's going to cost you a lot of money in weeds and reduce live weight gain.
Yeah, so while we're on that, Brad, what are you actually sowing with? And does it make a difference?
Rates?
No, more machines, I guess.
Yeah, so we're trying to direct drill everything in the perennial stuff. We just find that if we can spray it, a day or two beforehand, even in some cases we've actually sprayed afterwards. Yeah. Just because there's rain coming.
Before emergence.
Yeah, before emergence, yeah. But direct drilling, we've got a double disc coon drill with press wheels on the back of it. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Is that just so you don't disturb the possible weed seeds in the ground? Is that
that's correct. It gives your grass seed that head start. All the stuff that you're sowing in we seem to use lower rates. We have sown as little as 6 kilos of just grass seed, 2 kilos of flares, 2 cocksfoot and a couple of kilos of prairie grass, and we got pretty good results just from that. But
and no herbs in that mix sort of thing?
None there. That was at Clifton Creek.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, we're usually around 15 odd kilos total mix. But yeah, all direct drilled in. We just get a head start there and not disturbing anything between the rows to encourage those weed seeds to come up. So yeah, grasses get up and get established before we have to worry about the weeds coming through too much.
Yeah. So any other tips on establishing on that sort of mechanical side of thing? Do you roll paddocks beforehand if you've cultivated or anything like that? Yeah,
look, on the perennial stuff, everything's been direct drilled. I suppose if you were cultivating, then definitely roll afterwards would help. But look, we've pretty well stuck to direct drilling on perennial pastures and seems to work really well. We try not to cultivate unless we have to. Like, all paddocks get at least one good cultivation to level them out, maybe a second if we're desperate. But try to limit it, especially in the hills. It's you expose yourself and it's pretty risky doing too much cultivation if you don't have to. So, but no, we've found best results there, and they got press wheels behind the double disc, so all the seeds are rolled in firmly. So
now, any ideal moisture, obviously, but have you sown dry, or do you sow by calendar, or do you sow by when the moisture's ready to go?
Nah, definitely sowed a bit dry. We've sown perennials as early as middle of February when there's rain there, and because we've had a summer fallow, so we've had nothing in that paddock for a couple of months and picked up some rain. It's all looking good, and I'm happy to take the risk on a paddock or so 10 or 20 hectares and sow it dry. If it looks like there's rain coming, a bit of moisture in the ground, then we'll go for it and get in early. We found the paddocks that we've sown, no later than March, we always get multiple extra grazings in the year. Once we leave it into May, you're lucky to get a grazing before spring sort of thing, whereas we lamb down and carve down on paddocks that have been sown to late February, early March, and we get a couple of grazings on them, no problems at all, before lambing and calving in the late winter, early spring.
Yeah, all right, we'll just talk a little bit more about that grazing, especially that first grazing. Graze a little bit softer in that first grazing, or do you just go in and graze like it's been there for years already? Yeah,
definitely softer. I don't know, a lot of people will not recommend putting sheep on, but I just find the sheep less likely to pull them out, and we can put a big mob of sheep on and graze, and maybe it might only be 1 or 2 days with a couple of thousand sheep, and then move them on just to even everything up a bit, because some of your species might take off and start to dominate. But very, very light. We don't want to graze it to the ground, that's for sure. But later on, we sort of try and let a bit of seed set on the flares, or let them send a seed up and graze them down, but we try not to let it go away too much. Our MLA side up at Tamworth Crossing had actually trying to do everything by the book. We let it all set seed, and we had 7 foot of Phalaris in there in the first season. I think there was 16. Anyway, there's lots of feed there.
Quote the figure you're going to quote.
I was going to say 16. Not 16 tonne for the year.
I reckon it was
16 tonne for the year. We grew off that paddock and measured.
And that was about a 750 mil rainfall year.
Something like that, yeah. So a bit of nitrogen in there to get that, but you could not walk through there and see where you're going. And that hurt the lucerne, it hurt the clovers. They eventually come back, but the paddocks that year that we were actually not recommended, but we cut some early silage in a couple of paddocks to clean out some barley grass, and they definitely held up better with the clovers and the lucernes and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think if you can keep that grass down a bit, especially the Phalaris and the coxswain, keep it down a bit, let some light in, and not smother out the clovers and the lucernes too much, then you're better off. But yeah, it's a juggling act trying to, especially when you're short of feed for the year, and trying not to graze too hard. It's hard sometimes. Yeah.
So, but in a nutshell, ideally, high stocking rates for short time and not too much pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else to add from a agronomic point of view?
No, just reiterating what Brad said. I think that the biggest thing when you've got multiple species in there is ensuring you're getting light to the base of the plant as often as you can. So you don't want to go too far past canopy closure, so that you're encouraging those high digestible species like sub and white clovers to continue to grow well and fight for nutrients and fight for sunlight. And yeah, like there are sometimes opportunities for silage for perennial pastures, but if you're going to do it, I think the important thing is to do it early. You don't want to expose them to high temperatures in late spring or early summer. But whilst the quality's there in early spring, if you do have surplus feed, I think much better to get a cut of silage and take it off rather than let it sort of fall over itself and go a bit rank. You're just going to start to lose ground cover in those scenarios. And then the first thing to come back in those in autumn is probably going to be something like capeweed or some other weed to cover the gaps. So that spring management to make sure that you're not shading out your pastures is really important for the longevity of those pastures. And Barron Brugg Seeds, they've in a ryegrass situation, but they've done some studies on what leaf stage to graze at in ryegrass through spring, and when the pasture's really pumping in spring, they've found much better results for long-term persistence if you're not letting it too much dry matter to accumulate and effectively shade out the base of the plant for too long.
Right. What stage is that? Is that still your 3-leaf sort of stage? Or?
For those really highly productive ryegrasses, so that your hybrid ryegrasses and some of your perennials that might be doing sort of 10, 12 tonne on average, it's going in more at 2-leaf stage.
Right.
That's in a high nitrogen model as well, where you're getting quite large leaves growing. So you're effectively going in a canopy closure every time. And if you're going in a canopy closure, you're not shading out those daughter tillers that sprout from the base of the plant, because they will be the mature plant for next year. So the more you can look after those young tillers, the thicker your pasture will be in autumn.
So anything else, if we are trying to establish a really good perennial pasture, that you just got to try and avoid that's going to really hurt long-term performance?
Yeah, so I think over-cultivating can be a really important one. So I like cultivating after we do that soil test, and if it's 12 months out or 18 months out, whatever it is, put any amendments, could be lime, gypsum, chook or pig manure as well if organic matter is low, or soil biology is pretty low. So get all that sort of stuff done, and then that cultivation process is finished. You do see sometimes perennials can go really well for a year or two and then sort of hit the wall, and often it's because they've been cultivated too much and that soil structure is just completely gone. And then when we do get a wetter year, you just get a lot of compaction, and then roots can't get down as deep as they should be getting, and then we get a hot year come in and it's sort of burn off in 3 years. So there's certainly a fine line there, and you're often wanting to cultivate a bit to first of all to encourage that germination of weeds to clean it up for when you go into a perennial later, but ensuring that you're not over cultivating and trying to keep soil structure as best you can is a really important one.
What about nutrient application?
Yep. So certainly addressing that pH and that calcium magnesium balance, which lime can assist with, but that's where gypsum can be an important one. Any capital fertilizer with your phosphorus, certainly getting that to a respectable level, absolute minimum of 10 before sowing. Definitely sowing with DAP or MAP with your perennial pasture. You're just wanting to get it up as quick as you can. So, and something Brad mentioned was that he sows early, and especially with cocksfoot, sowing too late into the season when soil temperatures are dropping can be very, very hard to get cocksfoot to establish. you can have a lot of success with spring sowing or late winter sowing of cocksfoot into rising temperatures. But if it's getting really late in the season and it's a very late break and it's just not going your way, there's no harm in going in with an oat or an annual ryegrass or something for another 12 months and then making sure that you've got better conditions to sow in that next year. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned their variable seasons.
Yep.
So, Brad, back to you. If the season is starting to look rough, what are you starting to think about doing to preserve those pastures? What levers you got to pull?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of feeding too much, especially with breeding stock. So, start thinking about destocking. But look, if there's still a bit of moisture around, put a fair bit of nitrogen out. In the winter, we spray a bit of liquid nitrogen and gib acid out, especially over the Phalaris pastures, and that we can grow a massive amount of feed. We've measured in a couple of years now. We've cut and measured 1,800 kilos in 4 weeks in the middle of winter. So it's pretty easy. It's a lot quicker and easier than feeding hay and buying hay and cutting hay and grain and everything else. So but destocking, we sort of try and set everything around a spring calving, so and lambing. So look, our toughest times are in the autumn and through the winter. So if we don't get an autumn, we'll start thinking about destocking. And with the spring calving, we can do that. We can sell cows off, in calf or whatever it is to get rid of 100 cows if we need to or more. And just try and balance it out. Otherwise, the labour gets pretty difficult, especially up in the hills.
Yeah. Something I try to tell a lot of farmers is getting away from the mindset that they're a beef farmer or a dairy farmer, and say that they're all pasture farmers, they're grass growers, and then they're using, whether it's a lamb or bulls or whatever it is, to turn that grass into money. So if you're making those decisions and you've got plans around when to reduce or increase your numbers to suit what your pasture's doing, that's going to be the most sustainable way to actually to manage your land and be more productive with the result. So I don't think we can be too set on what our numbers are. We've got to be adaptive to what the season's doing, and that's going to then get the longevity out of our perennials and the longevity out of our herd as well, and probably gives options for people like Brad to be able to cull out some cows or some ewes that perhaps aren't breeding to their expectations or conformity traits. They're the times that you can make those decisions without it impacting you too much.
But have those animals picked out early. Have them in a separate mob, picked out early, because when you want to make that decision quick. If you've already got 100 cows that are less desirable, then you can just chuck them on a truck and get rid of them. You don't want to have to get everything in and decide which ones you want to keep, which ones you don't want to keep. And same with your sheep. I think if you've got a number in mind or a particular age group or something that you can get rid of if you have to, then
that's the time to do it.
Now, just from a practical point of view, either you can jump in. How do we assess how much feed we do have on hand? Is it literally knowing your farm, or do you walk through the paddock with a ruler, take dry matter cuts? What are you guys doing?
Driving around the farm, I think, is the most important thing, and you've got to be walking the paddocks. If you're just driving through a central laneway, it can be very deceptive how much feed's actually there, especially if you're assessing more around gateways that will often be nutrient camps. So it can be very easy to overestimate how much feed's there. So I think you've got to be driving around and walking the paddocks, or at least driving through paddocks to have a good idea of not only how much feed but what the quality of feed is.
Mm-hmm. I think on a motorbike's the best way. If you're in the cruiser with the window up and the heater on, you don't sort of notice as much. But if you're on the motorbike and you at least once a week go for a ride around your place, you get a pretty good feel for it. We've had a Pastures from Space program run on our place in the past, and that's pretty interesting. It'd be great when we can sort that out and I learn how to manage all that. But myself, just get a feel for it, I suppose.
Yeah. And does each one of your properties react a little bit different?
Yeah, completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got sands down at
beach sand at Bangwood and sort of intermediate at Clifton Creek, but in the hills, and then a bit heavier country, granite country up at Tambo. So
so learning each property, and one like boundary's going to turn off really quickly, respond really quickly to summer rain and things like that, I'm guessing. And
yeah, but each paddock individually too.
Yeah, right.
Paddocks, pastures. We've got some kikuyu country on the sands that, completely different to the annual crops on the sands to the perennials on the good perennials on the sand. It's each paddock's different. So and stock different at different times of year. Like the moment we've weaned lambs and happy to push them a bit harder the ewes and. But we don't want to go down to those sort of levels of pastures in the 2-3 months ago when we had lambs on the ewes. Don't want to compromise them at all. So
there's a lot of information in those last minute there, but someone like Brett walking around, there's other independent agronomists or retail agronomists that could walk through the paddock and actually tell you what they're looking for and experience that would be probably a viable option too for a lot of producers.
Yeah, well, hark back to homegrown feed being your main profit driver. So if that's going to be how you're going to make money, then knowing how to manage your pastures and estimate what you're going to have in a month, 3 months' time is super important. If that's not your strong suit, if you're better with machinery and cows, then absolutely go and find that advice. If you're comfortable and proficient with your inspecting your own paddocks, then you might need more help from an animal health consultant or a vet. So, but always keeping in mind that homegrown feed's going to be a major profit driver for any grazing enterprise. So, you've got to be confident or have people in your corner that are confident in assessing what's there, what the quality is, and how your stock are going to perform on it. In case you need to get some grain, in case you do need to buy in some hail silage or reduce numbers.
It's always good to have someone to blame as well if something works out right.
Yeah.
So. Now, Brad, why did you put your hand up to be part of this producer demonstration site up at Tambo?
Well, Jen probably put my hand up to start with.
When I asked that question, I thought, I reckon I know the answer to this.
But no, look, I think I could definitely see the value. I wanted to get out of the annual cropping phase. But yeah, I just got stuck in that annual cropping phase and need to get into good perennial stuff. It's a bit of a cheat sheet. We got a bit of money come back that went towards some fertilizer to encourage us to do that. It was interesting to see the pasture cuts and to take them and to get a bit of an eye for those measurements. It was always hard to pick. You go in and you take the pasture cuts and then you'd see the results later on. It's quite interesting. All the field days and that, we picked up a lot of info there and got a lot of free advice, I suppose, being part of it.
I think, I don't know if you mentioned at the start, but there was about 6 other producers that were part, yourself and 5 other producers were part of this as well, ranging right across Gippsland, wasn't there? Yeah,
and it's good to talk to them and see what they did differently and what worked and what didn't work. And, and each year we got a results booklet. So you could see what paid off and what didn't. And, and the money that went into that. So some of them, I think ours might have been one of the dearer sort of ones to start with. Fair bit of work and a lot of chemical and that went into it to start with. And nitrogen, it was all broken down into kilos of dry matter that we produced. And DSEs have been run on that paddock. So, definitely it was good to see the results there. The paddocks that had the preparation time and crops leading up to it and extra fert and the nitrogen and that paid off, and it didn't just look good. It paid off in DSEs have been run on that paddock, so and kilos of dry matter. So sometimes you can spend a lot of money leading into things and you don't know if it's going to pay off, which is what I've done in the past. You look at things and you go, I reckon I should do this, but it's hard to put a figure on it. But when someone else, when MLA can do all the figures for us, it made it a bit of a no-brainer for me. Once we've seen the results there, we just went from there and kept going. And same on other properties, and we're doing the same now. We've got a couple of extra paddocks put aside now. We're doing a bit of demo on at Bingwarden, but we'll have 100 hectares sown down the next couple of years there, and just start at one end of the property and go to the other end. I think. Following the same plans, really, the same results.
Well, what you said there is important, that all the figures have been broken down. If you go to the results books from the last couple of years at Gippsland Ag Group, it's all there from all the different properties. I don't think they've named the properties, but you can just look up that 16-tonne one and find Brad's property if you want. So, but there's differences in all the numbers, and it's good to see the different input costs versus what DSE you can produce or
and you can
measure.
fine tune it from there too, because like some of them had higher seeding rates, but if you're broadcasting that seed and cultivating it in, you're not going to get the same germination. So we're with a double disc drill, we're able to keep the seeding rates down lower, which saved a lot of cost. Like some paddocks, I think from memory, were over $300 and something dollars a hectare, $350 a hectare just for seed, and other paddocks weren't, were high hundreds or low 200s a hectare for seed. So everything else being equal, similar fertilizer, applications and everything else, similar, same cost to if you're going to use a contractor or your own drill, same cost to seed. Everything's the same cost. If you can save $100 a hectare on seed,
still get the result.
Get the results, and it definitely pays to either pay a contractor with a better machinery, better drill to drill it in, or or purchase one yourself.
Yeah. Rightio, let's do some practical take homes to wrap up this podcast. For a local producer who's feeling a bit overwhelmed, possibly, what's the first small steps, Brad, that you would recommend they take in the next month?
I think really get on top of your annual crops. If you can grow good annual crops and produce good food annual crop, and then work up to your perennial stuff. I think for me, I need a level flat paddock. You need a boom sprayer and a seed drill. But in the next couple of months, I suppose, get on top of those weeds. If you've got the perennial weeds, start there, start getting on top of them, and if that means a couple of sprays over the summer, or maybe a cultivation and a summer crop, then start getting in there. But like paddock selection's one, but I think a lot of properties could really start at one end and get the other end. It's just paddocks. Some paddocks are a lot easier and a lot quicker to turn around than others. So
Just quickly, if you did have a brand new farm, do you go worst paddock first or best paddock first?
Probably worst first. We've just done this, but some people's worst is different to other people's worst. We had some real scrubby stuff that needs some heavy machinery to clear that out. So that wasn't first on the list because it was quite expensive to remove that scrubby sort of woody sort of stuff on there. So I think start with your worst first, I reckon. But
I'm definitely an advocate for that as well. You're better producing paddocks are something you can rely on. And if you take a high performing paddock out, you might be taking out 8-10 tonne to the hectare out of your system. If you're taking a really poor paddock, it might only be 2 or 3 tonne for the whole year, which is very, very easy to make up in an annual or some sort of cropping situation. So you're not losing too much production in that perspective. But then when you're finished, if you're doing everything right, that should be the best or close to the best paddock on your farm then. So a really quick way over the grand scheme of things to improve your carrying capacity, I think, is to get stuck into those poorer paddocks. And
one of the big challenges we've had is turning those paddocks around, but like you said, still managing the stock on the property. So, we took 100 hectares out of a 400 hectare property. You struggle to feed everything. So, there's other options there, potentially containment feeding, and for those first few months till you can get some feed off those paddocks. Maybe.
That's a fair old whack you take out in 1 year though, Brad, 25%.
Yeah, well, I'm over half this year.
Yeah, all right.
So,
Getting worse. But you have built up those other paddocks, haven't you? So,
no, containment. That's my option.
Right, but what I'm saying is that you're producing more off the paddocks you have sort of.
100%. Yeah.
Now, Brett, little quick checklist of things that before we're going to commit dollars to a project. What would you recommend?
Soil test. I think another really important one that we haven't touched too much on is paddock size. So if you've got massive paddocks, actually consuming grass is going to be a problem. So having your paddock sizes easy to manage for whatever amount of stock you're running is an important one to get the consumption out of the grass. Probably paddock size is I guess a big picture idea to consider, but soil test as quick as you can. Now's really good in East Gippsland. There's moisture there. Probably ideally wait about 8 weeks after you've put any fertilizer on. So you put Pasture booster or something out just wait a few more weeks so you're getting consistent figures on your soil test, and then you can start making a plan as early as possible around, okay, we do need lime, or no, lime's not something we need to worry about, so perhaps we don't need to cultivate. But if you're able to have those conversations and get a plan in place, say before Australia Day or the end of January, it not only gives you clarity on what you're doing, but it really helps your retailers as well. So if you walk into to Elders or Ag Warehouse or Mewers or whoever it is, and you've got a plan ahead of you, it makes it a lot easier for them to actually get the product in when you need it. Pretty hard if you walk in April and you're wanting half a tonne of annual ryegrass and they can't get it for a couple of weeks. That could really hurt you at that time of year. So having a plan, gives you a clear message, but also helps the people that you need to assist you to get from A to B. Just the more time you give yourself, everything's going to be a lot easier. So that's the biggest one. And then assessing what weeds you've got in the paddock and having a plan, whether it's just a general broadleaf spray or if it is some of those tougher perennial grasses. Starting to get some selectives on them or some knockdowns like Roundup, just to get on top of those as quick as we can. So we've got moisture in the ground now, and we're starting to get a little bit too late. Like if you don't have plans now to put crop in the ground, it's probably starting to get a bit late now. But chemical fallow with some moisture in the ground, that's going to really pay off for you in autumn if there's some subsoil moisture there to tap into.
And have that seed ordered, ready to go.
Yep.
If you're sowing in the autumn, you really want to have that sorted before Christmas, don't you? Or
Yeah.
at least organised somewhere.
Yep.
There's nothing worse than you get rain through February into March and you ring up, you're like, hey, where's that seed?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, still a couple of weeks away, and a couple of weeks turns into a month, and then you're trying to organise a contractor or something to seed it, and have that teed up.
And that's the two things that'll hold you up is contractors and seed suppliers. So majority of seed that we sow in autumn is generally going through cleaning sheds any time between now and the end of January. That's then got to have germination counts and purity counts. That takes time, but sometimes your plan A can't be there, but your plan B for a variety is the next best option. That'll actually be there when you want it. So if you're letting your contractor know, mate, I've got 20 hectares and I'm going to sow down around the autumn break, let's just keep in touch. He'll just put you on the list.
Just pencil you in there and wait for your call.
Yeah, but if you ring him up and say, I need you end of the week,
it's
probably not happening. Yeah.
No, there's a lot in that, and so if anyone wants to reach out to either Brad or Brett, I'm sure they're happy to take a phone call, so feel free. Now, I didn't put this on the run sheet, but we always have a question at the very end of the podcast, and the question is, what is something that you've learnt recently that surprised you? So, often learning things, not always surprised, but Brad's looking like he's trying to rack his brains for something.
So what?
Brett looks dumbfounded. You got anything for us?
One thing that I thought was interesting that I read from a copper perspective actually, copper the nutrient, not our police force. So especially on heavy soils, copper can often be very low, and something that we don't address too often. So if we're not doing those soil tests where we're ticking the box to look at trace elements and we just look at our PKS or our macronutrients, and we start driving production and we put some nitrogen on and really start growing a lot more yield, we can greatly reduce how much copper is actually in the tissue. So we think we're doing well by our stock by producing more feed, which is a big tick, obviously. But if we don't know what our copper levels are and we've used nitrogen to grow that more feed, we can greatly reduce how much copper goes into the plant and as a result in the animal. So then we can have huge reductions in conception rates and reproduction, but also things like bone density and bone structure. So I think if you're a farm that perhaps traditionally hasn't grown a lot of grass and you're looking to whack on some nitrogen and not considering the whole gamut of nutrients that are there, really important to tick the box for the traces, because the problems we can run into with low copper can be pretty bad for stock and pretty demoralising for producers as well. So that relationship between copper and nitrogen use was something I only recently really dove into and thought was pretty interesting. Yeah.
There you go. Oh, that was a good one. You're off the hook, Brett. What about
do
you,
got,
Brad?
Actually, listened to this podcast only earlier this week. Justin was on there and talking about lambing in containment. That got me thinking. I never thought it was a done thing, but apparently he's been successful with that. So gets me thinking about a few more options, and potentially when we sow these pastures in, we could potentially lock up more animals in containment for longer and sow down more country at once, or just run a higher stocking rate overall, or maybe it's a particular class of sheep that we could do that. So it might be an option in a tough year.
Guess that's nearly like a dairy farm, how they carve down a lot of the time, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if anyone is interested, that was Justin Dunn's podcast. It was out a couple of weeks ago. He's the founder and owner of Shepherd Ag Automatic Feed Systems, isn't he, Brad?
Yeah, and I just assume that, and I've been told before that it doesn't work. Joining in containment's quite successful, but lambing in containment's not a great idea. But with one of their longer feeders and in it with a bit of pasture, maybe a 5 hectare containment pen, something like that might give us a few more options in the future.
All right, Brad. Well, we'll get you in next lambing to see how lambing in containment's going. We'll see if you're as happy as you are now. It's all gone up the creek. But thanks both of you for coming in, and we'll touch base again soon.
No worries. Thank you.
A big thank you for tuning in today. And remember, if you have a question about today's episode or a topic you'd like us to cover, reach out to one of our many platforms and join the conversation. We're here because of your passion and commitment to agriculture. Together, we can build a stronger farming future.
This podcast is made possible by the Future Drought Fund Regional Drought Resilience Planning Program, co-funded by the Victorian and Australian governments.